Well, hello. I apologize if I'm late. I saw on the program that there was going to be some music, so I figured I could be a little late, but I didn't know I was late. And then, all of a sudden, I drove up and I saw all these cars and I thought maybe something else is going on. I turned around and started to go back out and I said, "Gee, what if it is tonight?" And then I saw all these bumper stickers that I read Ruth Moore, and I knew I was in the right place. There, I guess. Unlike me, but I was not really thinking exactly what I was going to do tonight. I thought there would be a number of people here who had heard me before, and especially heard me recite some of the ballads of Ruth Moore in Cold as a Dog in the Wind Northeast. And I thought that maybe you were getting tired of that. But I see a lot of people here that I don't know. And so maybe this whole thing has changed around on the fly. I put down a program here. The only thing I had to write on was a Sam's Club receipt of things that I might be doing. But I think a lot of that will go by the way. I don't know for sure, Bob. How long do you think? 20 minutes? Half an hour?
As long as you want. Until people turn on you.
Until they turn on me? Okay. All right. Well then, in spite of everything else, this has been my comfort blanket. This has been the thing that I wrap myself in when I come before a group. Not only because it speaks to me in the same language that my mother and father used to speak to me in when they told me stories at night, but it continues to connect me to Ruth. And this week of her birthday, and let me see, was it today that is her birthday?
21st.
21st?
22nd?
21st, yeah, okay. And that brings back all kinds of the memories the good memories that I have had when I had the opportunity to visit with her at her house. If I had a regret, and I'm not going to regret it, what good does that do? It would be that I didn't have longer to meet with her. It was only in the last 3 or 4 years of her life, though I'd heard of her long before that. And apparently, during one of our conversations, she let on that she had heard of me as well. So I feel like we go back a little bit. And the other thing is that she was born on this day in 1903, which happened to be, pardon me, between the time my father was born in July 15th, 1902, and the time my mother was born, December 2nd, in 1903. And so I was very comfortable with talking with and listening to a person of her age and that much older than me. And I think she became comforted too by my stories. She was an artist. There isn't any question about that. Now we know that she was a literary artist, but she also had production art. She was a carver and appreciated a lot of things. And to me, the essence of an artist is, well, maybe in their fine detail, but it's in their mind. It's the creativity. And so the piece that typifies that, the piece that accentuates that more than anything else for me is the prologue in Cold as a Dog in the Wind Northeast. The imagination, I guess that's what I'm looking for. I'm searching for imagination. And so it goes, it's self-effacing at the end, but it goes, I once see a whale with a gold tooth, and he riz right out of the sea. And he opened his mouth in the morning sun, and he showed that tooth to me. And once, when I was fishing the deep ground with nigh 6 pounds of lead, I caught a cod as big as a man, and it had a man's head. Oh, there ain't no end to what I'd tell once I was well begun. Like seeing the devil rise from the sea instead of the rising sun. And sea snakes lashing the moonlit sea with the terrible lollipins, and little mermaids with diamond eyes and solid silver fins. For some have eyes to see strange sights, and such a one I be. But I ain't known as an honest man, and nobody harks to me. Well, honesty and truthfulness was some of the virtues that she carried all the time. So to be self-effacing didn't work with me. But the visuals, the imagination did work with me and still does, and I think it might even hold a piece of your heart and mind. I don't know why I chose this next one, but I did. I am going to get to some of the ballads, for those of you who might be disappointed if I didn't. But I also was looking through a number of her other books. The Tired Apple Tree was published by her estate after her passing. And my copy is inscribed to Dennis with best wishes, Esther Trask. Esther Trask was her sister. Esther Trask was one of my teachers in high school. That's a whole story for another telling. This one, this poem is entitled Rocks. Simple title. And some might think, like her work, that they're simple works. But if you think about them, you will know that whether it's her novels or her poetry, I think I heard you talking about less is more. The fact of the matter is, she has a lot to say, and she says it. Some people read right over it, thinking it's not heavy enough. Rocks. The rocks of the earth are its history. Dinosaur tracks they hold. They tell what's known of who got here first. They say how old is old. Fossil shells on mountainsides mark there the depths of seas that rose and fell with the changing tides of numberless centuries. Creatures came but did not stay. Diplococcus lies in his deep. Time tired and tossed away the ammonites that sleep. But not the same are the fossils found in the age of inquisitive man, for the tallest mountains wore down to the ground 3 times and are rising again. Who can write on time's dust the secret ebb and flow of what roared over the earth's crust billions of years ago? Fierce fires still rage on earth, and within rocks shift and fissures crack. What difference now to who started in and never did come back? For the home of man is already rock, while his triumphs are shouted and sung. Whatever volcano or earthquake shock tell him how young is young. The rocks of the earth hold secrets, weathered, battered, brown, yet a pebble found in a wayside ditch might be cut for a king's crown. And a certain beach rock, tossed by the tides, holds a shimmer all its own. It takes a polish of silent dark, as if the black moon shone. The lapidary who cuts a gem slices his agates thin. With professional care he handles them and finds out what lies within. For the outside crust of an agate stone looks dingy, of little worth. But inside, when shaped and polished, are some of the loveliest colors on earth. Design is there, mathematical. A scientist wouldn't be fooled over what happened inside a rock when the gases stiffened and cooled. But sometimes a difference seeps in. As the lapidaries know, when polish shows up a landscape of trees with a background of snow, or a perfect scene of a big white owl sitting poised on the limb of a tree, what of scientific logic then? For how did this happen to be? Does some hidden consciousness live in rocks who pokes fun at the human race and leaves a portrait of someone to find of the devil in hell with flames at his back and a horrible monkey face? The lapidary who found this scene is thinking and wondering still. But nobody has an answer to this. And I don't think anyone will. She, as I hope some of these poems will reveal, was not only a deep thinker, and not only a questioner, but one who had real opinions. I guess you could call them political opinions. And some of them are revealed in some of these poems. Let me see, this one, next one is called, this one might be one, Inscription for an H-Bomb. I don't know how I would find that. I should have marked it, huh? Well, now that I've set it up, I'm going to have to find it. December. I must have run out of Sam's receipts. I could have stuck it in here somewhere. Well, this is terrible. Oh, I did find it. It's quite a long one. It's got 5 lines. Inscription for an H-bomb. Now, how long has it been since we've called them H-bombs? But do you remember? I think the H was for hydrogen, wasn't it?
Sure.
So this is the inscription, I guess, that you would put on one before you dropped it or shot it or however you detonated it. Here I am. Nope. Nope, nope, that's not what it says. I've got to do it the right way. Here am I, who have smashed all your microscopes. I have brought you perpetual winter. But give me credit. I have also cured your hatreds forever. This was interesting. It is titled July. And if you've been around the shore or been on the water recently, you perhaps notice that there are a lot of fish in the water. They're actually what we refer to as forage fish. It used to be just primarily and maybe only herring, but now there's a variety of pelagic finfish called menhaden. It's referred to as pogies. And then there's mackerel, and there's other fish that come into these waters during this time in July. And sometimes there are so many of them, and they are pursued by those bigger fish that want something to eat, that their only place of escape is to rush right up onto the beach. I have some videotape, that was before there was digital stuff, of waves of them coming up onto the beach, and my kids squealing with joy, going down trying to hold on to one to catch it. But that's how they did it then, and it's how they still do it, and apparently they did it during this time in July. Under the summer sky, in peaceful midnight, in the face of the full moon, before the turn of the tide, seals, dogfish, pollock, mackerel, all sea hunters of prey, drove a school of brit into the shallows of the cove. The little fish, frantic in terror, fled, crazed, into the only way they could go. They plunged headlong to shore, died in windrows, gasping on the beach. Then, out of ledge crevices, holes in the sand, out of the green-black sea bottom, woven with tide-sucked, matted weeds, countless crabs came, scrambling sideways to the feast, claws clutching, mouths gobbling. They made no sound, except for a slight commotion of spray as they crossed the edge of the water to the sand. They were silent, but their wet backs returned bright sparkles to the moon, and the beach looked as though invaded by a colony of undersea black stones, which had somehow come alive and were moving there. The tide turned gray, green, ice cold in the light of morning. The beach peas rustled in the small breeze that comes with dawn. Trees on the bank, quiet, drift still, slight ripple on the water. Land weeds in the clearing, flattened with dew. The clean and empty sand lies under a peaceful sky. There's a lot of images in that, if you had them going through your head, and I hope you did, because I didn't bring any pictures. It's right here. It's right here. I didn't feel as though I needed any. You would think I might have marked this one. Oh, damn it. Well, rather than try to hunt for that, I'll do, and I have done this before here. It's called 𝗄𝗶𝗵. And Maine has a long heritage of seafaring people and ships. Some that carried cargo and sought cargo all around the world. Some that went fishing. I suppose there were some even for pleasure. That's what they tell me now. But this one is about a ship that had finished all of its life. And as they often did if they didn't sink or crash somewhere in a storm, when most of the goodness was gotten from them and it was hard to keep them afloat, people just ran them aground and let them stay. as a quick aside, if any of you have been to Northeast Harbor and been to, well, it's got so many names now, I guess the name of it is the 𝗙𝗘𝗟𝗘𝗕𝗥𝗏 Pound and Restaurant. It's at the end of the hotel down at the harbor. Well, where that restaurant is a lawn that slopes down to a road and you can drive around. When I was growing up, that road and all of the tennis courts and everything else weren't there. That was all the harbor that had come up that far. They put that bulkhead across, and everything in the harbor grounded out at low water. Fishing boats and everything else. You had to fish according to the tide. And so they pumped all that muck out of one half of the harbor and deposited where it's so pretty now. But my father at that time had a dragger, a 54-foot eastern rig dragger. He used to go ground fishing. And it had lost all of its usefulness. And so he brought it up into that cove, which is right now almost where the Down East Lobster Pound is, or whatever it's called. And there they disassembled it, salvaged what they could, and burned the rest. My nephew, who recently passed away, and who was a bit older than me, and I used to hang around down there while the men were doing that work of taking the boat apart. And the thing that I can remember most about it, it must have been in the winter, because there was a like an ice fishing tent, an ice house, if you've seen them on, and we could go in there to get warm if we wanted to, and we did. This is Skipper McBride. Sorry for that detour. Down on the clam flats of Burnt Point Cove, the hull of an old vessel lies rotted away. There's not much left of her, some slime, limp slats that the tide runs over every day. But you can see her ghost if you know how to guess. You can trace the outline of a long, shallow dip, covered half with mussel beds and mud cove mess, where lie the last forever signs of a century's dead ship. She was no clipper on the China run. She was a working coaster, plugging up and down with cargoes of everything under the sun, hauling back supplies and goods in a shipbuilding town. She might be a mystery, at one with mud and silt, after 200 years of time and creeping tide, but she left behind her history and the way she was built, written down by her builder, Skipper McBride. Papers thin and tattered in an old sea chest tell that she was the Mary Ann, named for Skip's wife. List of his hand-picked lumber. He used what woods were best to build a vessel tough enough to last a man's life. Skip didn't buy lumber. His wood lot was the reason. First, he cut down and sawed up his white oak trees, for white oak, air-dried, might take a year to season. He had time then to ransack the swamps for hackmatack knees, white pine mass, 2 sticks, sized and dressed, smooth as the skin on Mary Ann's back. Yellow birch for underwater work always the best. That would never rot, that no jolt could crack. Skip wrote about a tree just right for what he needed, but he found under it, hidden in the pucker brush, an old campsite with a lot of Indian arrowheads scattered on the ground. Sign of an Indian tribe drove off and gone. Let the undergrowth have it, keep where it will. Keep it where it be. He walked out around it and then moved on. I'll be damned if I'll use that one. It ain't a lucky tree. He carried his own lucky piece. It was a gray, dark, fossil stone. The sailor he bought it from didn't want to let it go, said it meant long sailing for any man to own. The little critter in it lived 1,000,000 years ago. Skip wrote about the sailor. Likely he lied so's he could put the price up, make me think 'twas right. But that talk about 1,000,000 years kind of stirred me up inside. I asked him what the critter was. He said, an ammonite. I asked him where he come from. He said he was a Greek. Damn foreigner or nothing, I paid his price in gold. For that little curled up critter done everything but speak. Said good luck and long life and old, old, old. Somewhere offshore in the tricky Gulf of Maine, buried deep or water-worn, however drowned men go, are the bones of Skip McBride, lost in the hurricane, called in the records then the century's worst blow. It smashed up the Marianne, left her a wreck, drove her toward the coastline before the mighty blast. Skip and 2 sailors washed off her deck, trying to cut the rigging from a floating mast. 2 weeks later, the mate and 3 men sailed her home on jury rig, a hope and a prayer. She was too racked out to go to sea again. They ground her on Burnt Point Flats and left her there. They brought ashore her logbook with Skip's chest. It turned up in someone's attic some 50 years ago. Skip's last entry was, "The weather's turning west. Come on, you goddamn ammonite, it's time for you to show." The mate wrote up in the logbook a few short notes that told about the hurricane and how Skip died, about sailing home with their hearts in their throats, and the vessel half sinking on each change of wind and tide. Skip McBride's lucky piece that told him what would be doesn't speak of luck now in tomorrow's unknown. Says only lost, forgotten, gone in the sea, the little curled up critter in its nest of dark stone. You had some pictures there too, didn't you? All right. I think I've done that. I tell you, where'd Bob go? Oh, there he is. I didn't start keeping time, so I'm going to leave that up to you. You can just wave, whatever. All right? I think I'll go to some of my comfort blankies now, maybe start sucking my thumb. I don't know if I should apologize or not. I'll try it anyway, accept it or not. Some of these ballads I've memorized, and some I haven't. And this one I haven't, so I'll be reading it, so that's all right. This is called The Ballad of Willie. It is primarily about 2 brothers. That's the characters. It's more than that. There's another one that we may get to later called The Ballad of 3 Green Waves. It's also about 2 brothers. It's interesting that she keeps picking. Oftentimes in stories, things are in 3s, but she uses 2s. No comment. Down by the sand beach, looking for an oar, I met my brother Willie wading in to shore. You're wet, Willie. Rockweed in your hair. Sand in your pockets. What's it doing there? Willie said, knocking clam flats off his shoe, "I've just come back from being drowned, if it's anything to you." "Well, of course it ain't, really," I said. "Hell, but the fact is, Willie, you don't look well." I thought my brother Willie was drunker than a skunk. So I says, careful, you been on a drunk? Willie looked ugly. Then he says, yes, half seas over would cover it, I guess. Come home, Willie. Come and get dry. But Willie looked seaward, and he hove a long sigh. I come down from Cargill's bar last night, said he, a-thinking what lady would ever marry me. I have had from many, many a caress, from Moll and Paul and Mary and Margaret and Tess, from Sue and Joe and Helen and Annie and Alma and Em. Yes, yes, I said, Willie, I know all about them. I've always thought, said Willie, that I was pretty clever. Out here last night, the moon shone bright and it looked like forever. The waves was running up the sand in little fins of foam, and I thought, I'll walk the beach a while, and then I'll go home. But as I walked, I saw out there what seemed to be a head and shoulders floating. It was right out there, he said. I see his finger pointing, his hand all bloodless white, wrinkled up and parboiled like it had soaked all night. Was someone drowned, Willie? What was it that you spied? Whose body was drifting in the cold night tide? It wasn't no one's body, Willie said to me. It was the damnedest, prettiest girl I ever hoped to see. A-floating down the moon path, all ringed around with foam, and not a stitch of clothing on, as if she was to home. And while I watched, she waved her hand and turned herself about. Says to me, if you want me, you've got to come in, for I ain't coming out. Willie, I cried, you're crazy. And Willie looked at me. I put one foot down off the beach into that white foam, said he. The first foot I put in the sea, I felt a cold wind blow. And the next foot I put in the sea, I knew I was going to go. And when I put my body in, I saw the moon path wide break into 1,000,000 diamonds that tinkled down the tide. And then I saw her swirl and dive. Her bright and gleaming head was lost in foam and moonshine. And I think she laughed, he said. Willie, I said. Willie. And Willie looked at me. I've swum all night. I've drowned, he said. I've vanished in the sea. I see 100,000 wrecks. I see the pirates' gold. I see 1,000,000 dead men's bones. But above all, I've been sold. Didn't you see the girl? I says. Not anywheres, all night? For that ain't like you, Willie. All right, he says, all right. I've seen too many women. The tall, the thin, the fat. And she had a fish's fins and tail, he said, and who wants that? He shook the sand out of his shoes and the rockweed off his head. I'm done, and done forever. The foam's my home, he said. Willie, I said. Willie, like you said, are you dead? My wife's not here tonight, so I can tell you this one. I only say that because this is not her favorite. That's one of mine. I spent a lot of the day, like I have been during the last week, and I will be for the next 2 weeks, I think, of harvesting my garlic. It's garlic that I planted last October. It's very interesting, that little garlic. About 9 months after you plant it before you harvest it. This, we have a clayey kind of soil, even though I've put all kinds of amendments to it where I plant my garden. And one of the things that I do after I plant my garlic is that I cover it with seaweed that I've harvested off beaches, not seaweed that I've picked from rocks or anything, live seaweed, but dead seaweed. And I don't provide any watering to it. I rely on Mother Nature, as it be. I think I planted 2,300 plants. That's a lot for a guy my age. It's a lot more to harvest. And you can't pull them up like you ought to be able to pull up garlic. Every single one I have to chisel practically out of that clay, hard packed clay. But they're beautiful, beautiful garlics. And so I guess I'm saying this because I've become a bit of a, I wouldn't call it a gardener and I wouldn't call it a farmer, but I've become a bit of a person interested in growing things, whereas all my life and all of my family have been fishermen. Bonnie, on the other hand, my wife, her father, in addition to being a plumber, was a very good gardener and farmer. And so I thought she might like this, but apparently she doesn't. Or maybe it's another one that she doesn't. Actually, it is another one that she doesn't. I went too far afield on this one, I guess. Actually, there's quite a few things she doesn't like, but don't let that get back to her. This is called the Ballad of Tryphosa's Husband. Now, it's told in the voice of Tryphosa. And some have told me that they actually like the way that I tell some of Ruth's stories from my voice, which they find in the written word. But I can't replicate what I think I'm hearing when Tryphosa speaks. So you'll have to use your imagination for more than just pictures on this one. They were a couple who lived on an outer island, as many did. We only have now, I think, 13 unbridged islands that have inhabitants or have communities. But we used to have a lot more. And if you lived on one of those islands, what would you do? Would you be a stock trader or do internet? No, you would be a fisherman. And well, that's what he was expected to do. And that's what she expected him to do. And that's what the community expected him to do. And that's what everybody expected him to do. And so I've always thought that if you are caught up in that world, that life, where you really want to be doing something different, but the expectation is that you're going to do something else, it's almost like a living purgatory. Well, he wasn't old, and his health was good, and he had no call to go and get queer. Well, there couldn't have been a better place for him to be than right out here. His folks was fishermen, born and bred. And it never seemed so hard to me that a man who was all but born in a boat should, of course, make his living out of the sea. But every winter, when work was slack and he ought to be fixing his traps and boat, he'd sat with that seed book under his nose till I could have jumped right down his throat. And before the frost was out in the spring, he'd be digging down on his knees. "Ike, I'd say, it's a fool thing. You can't grow nothing on rocks like these. Why, even the trees is spraddled out because the roots hit rocks and they won't go down. And there ain't much use in garden truck where goose grass, even in June, goes brown. But he never give no heed to me. He was as sot in his ways as a hen. But God never meant this place to grow. And so I told him over and again, but every spring for 20 years, he dug like he'd a kind of a craze. Why, the money he'd spent on seeds and stuff would have kept him in oil pants all of his days. Last year, he got him some good black earth, dug up from a farm in on the land. Like to lugged himself to death, spreading it onto the rocks by hand. But all of his seeds, they come up and they grow. There's greens of stuff you'd raise in a can. Ike was as proud as a pint of milk. I never see such a change in a man. But I done my darndest. Ike, I says, weather's brewing. Don't you forget, we'll have tempest before we're through. We ain't had a season without one yet. But he was stepping clean off the ground, never could see beyond his nose. Oh, I've got a lick this year, he says, 'cause under them rocks, the roots grows. Well, it come in August. The sun rose red as a kilt pig for a couple of days, and the gulls flew up and made a touse and took the land, and there, I says, we ain't had a storm like that for years. It's a wonder I'm even here to tell the tale. I thought the lighthouse was pounding down, the sea made so, and it blew such a gale. I went to bed, but I never slept. There was 4 windows blew in the eastern rooms, and in the morning, them rocks was swept, like the angels of God had been there with their brooms. Ike, he opened the kitchen door, and he stood there mumbling under his breath. Look, I says, there's mess enough without you acting like we've had a death. Over and over again, I said it won't grow. It just ain't God's will. He spun around like a crazy man. God Almighty, he says, keep still. You and God, he says, is done. I've stood this wrangling till I'm a wreck. Blast you and blast God and blast this sea. Shut up, I'll break your goddamn neck. Then he scrambled all of his seeds into an old tin pail with nary another word to me. And I thought he was going out like he usually did to heave rocks and cuss at the sea. So I said, if you're going out in this, you better put on your hat and coat. But he slammed the door. And the next thing I knew, I heard the engine starting his boat. Oh, my heart come up, and I run upstairs, and I pointed the spyglass out over the trees, and there was his boat, right off the land. It was horrid the way she clumb them seas. Water rolling over the bow. And there stood Ike, his pail in hand, right in the face and the eyes of God, sowing seeds like you do on land. I won't forget till my dying day, not till they lay me out in my winding sheet. Ike planting seeds in the bay with his boat sinking under his feet. I figure to go inshore this fall. It's kind of lonesome living alone. I could have felt that he was nearer by if he'd been buried under a stone. But my brothers died and left me a farm. The letter said there was hens and a cow. So I guess I can raise garden truck to sell, and I'll manage to live somehow. Thank you. There's a little bit of irony in that one, wasn't there? I haven't seen that hook yet, so I'm going to do another one. This is the one that she doesn't like. I might say that about a lot of them, but I'm not going to. Oh, there's no sense looking it up. I think I got this one. This is called the Ballad of Three Green Waves. And as I said, this two brothers theme is in this one too. I first told this to a group when I was at the high school teaching teaching a course that I had called The Maine Fisherman. Might have been some of you or one of you in that course who's here tonight. I'm not going to name names. But one of the brothers is named Hen, probably short for Henry, and another brother is called, boy, I better look this up, Hen and, help me out, who knows? This is something. I'm just getting too old for this. Jop is his name, and Jop might be short for Jasper. And as it turns out, apparently there were a couple of brothers, they might have been named Dow, last name, who were Henry and Jasper. That was just what was told to me. But she would say, Ruth would say, that wasn't intentional. Like when one of her novels would come out, and she gave me this story, she described some woman in the novel as having red hair, maybe, or being left-handed or something that was obvious. And she said she was at the post office after this novel had come out, and some woman came up to her wagging her finger at her and says, "How dare you put me in your book?" And Ruth says, "Now dear, you don't have red hair." Plausible denial. Everything else would point to her. Or, "You're not left-handed." Yeah, this is the one. This is the Ballad of Three Green Waves. No, I ain't got no dory, mate. I goes by myself, alone. I can't stand nobody gomming around anything's my own. I ain't married, and I never will. I comes when I likes, and I goes. Oh, folks and fussin' very well for them it likes 'em so, but when I puts out to haul my traps in a good rip-stavin' sea, there ain't a soul on the face of this earth worryin' after me. There was my brother, years ago. Got him a wife and a kid. He worried and wore himself plumb out, being easy in what he did. I remember we was fishing outside one time. We'd come on a howling blow. Cold as a dog and the wind northeast, thickened tar with snow. Them was the days we worked with sails. You see, there weren't no engines then. I had a pea-pod and steered with an oar. But that weren't enough for him. No, he had a dory rigged up with a mast and a mainsail without no jib, so he could sit in the stern and steer with that tiller hugged in his rib. Well, the wind was coming, and Hen shoots up, one eye on the line of foam. "Jop!" he yells. "What in hell'll I do? I've left my compass to home." Thinks I to myself, you goddamn fool, you're all rigged up like a bloomin' yacht. You've been so blasted Well, I hove him mine. "Catch!" I says, and he caught. But Hen weren't no good when it come to fog, nor snow squalls thickened sin. But I never seen the rampaging yet that I could lose my bearin's in. Down she come, and she was a bitch. And I squat on the end of my oar, and I headed into her just hard's I could, and let her roar. I wasn't troubled, what'd I care? I never had no wife. And as for dying, well, there's them that's troubled all their life. "Holler, you damned old slut," I says. "Holler and bust your lungs, and if I get scared of your goings on," says I, "may I be hung." Then I sung all the hymn tunes that I ever knowed, 'cause them's the kind you can roar. Never did hear a word I sung, but My throat got kind of sore. And then I looks behind, and I sees 3 green waves following fast as sin, each of them reaching his whiskers out to grab and roustle me in. Thinks I to myself, if them catches me, glory, amen, amen. Why, there's fish that'll have a good feed tonight. Revive us again, again. The first one was dark and deep and smooth as a coffee cup. The next one was a slash of foam like a kettle boiling up. But that last one, oh, he was a whole green sea. Had a wicked eye and slobbering jaws, and he's the one's longing for me, thinks I. So I spits out over the peapod stern, and I turns my back on the sea, and in a minute I feels the rise of that first one under me. That first one lifted us up and up, soft as a sea of oil. The next one bit at me going by, and I could see its innards boil. 6 fathom deep in the trough he made, I looked through that glass green sea, clear as a bell through that last wave as was towering over me. Then the bare black bottom spread beneath for miles and miles around, and school on school of big sea fish looked up without a sound. Their eyes were buttons off dead men's coats, all shiny and cold and still. And the first time ever in all my life, I felt my innards chill. For whilst I was looking, down come hen, sunk like a chunk of lead. Oh, he was as large as life and as natural, only I seen that he was dead. And then big sea fish swayed aside with a little swirl and a swish, and then I never see him no more. Only the backs to them fish. And the snake weeds waving up and down, their ends all crimped and curled. You know the trough between 2 big he waves is the stillest place in the world. But then foam was in my mouth like hair and howling in my ears, and I swum the middle of that there wave for 100,000 years. Till I bumped my head on the backshore beach, spewed up like a goddamn pill, and that old wave went reeling back, laughing, fit to kill. Now a dory is made to stand the seas of most any kind of a gale, but all that we ever found of hen was the top to his dinner pail. But I maintained then, and I maintained now, that hen would have saved his life if his mind had been on steering his boat instead of on his wife. Oh, if anything ever come to me, says hen, what would my poor wife do? I never cared a hoot in hell, by gory, and I come through. No, sir, when I goes alone, through fire and water and paint. I ain't got a soul to worry about me. I don't care if I ain't. I can't figure out why she doesn't like that. I'm going to end this with one more. Is that all right? It's probably the standard. Well, it's not the standard. I mean, I like them all. But a lot of people like this. First of all, it's not quite as, well, I don't know if dark is the right word, but there is a certain reality that seeps into a lot of what she has done. There's no question about it. And the reality that seeps into this one is something that you'll have to form your own opinion on. When we used to catch herring for food in this country, and certainly within the Gulf of Maine, and certainly within Maine itself. Those herring were caught by the trillions and put into cans, and if you've eaten sardines, then you know what I'm talking about. So that industry has gone. The last cannery, sardine cannery, and there were literally hundreds along the coast of Maine. The last cannery was in Prospect Harbor, just down the coast a ways. And that produced its last run of canned sardines. I'm going to say it was probably in the 2010, 12, somewhere in there, Pete. Peter was the manager of that plant when it closed. Bumblebee, I think, bought it, was at Bumblebee, and they closed it. All of the sardines now that you see in any of the stores, although they might have familiar brand names, you have to look very closely to see where they came from. And they came from Poland or Spain or Portugal or wherever, but not Maine. But the way that we used to catch them was initially, or very early on, we used to set up traps in a cove. The Native Americans did it first, and we called them weirs, or some people say whirs or something, I don't know. I've always called it a weir. And it's a series of poles in a cove, and they were woven initially with brush as a barrier material. That's what the natives used. We used netting. And you would wait for the flood tide at night, dark, not a bright moon, and the fish would come in huge schools and go along the shore and feed on the phytoplankton that had been created during the day from the sunlight and the water. And then when the tide ebbed, started to go back out, they would go back out too and go into the deep water. That was their protection. Well, we were trapping them in these weirs. Another side story there. The next thing we did was that we had what's called a stop seine, and so a weir is pretty permanent. It's in one cove. Now you might have more than one weir, but you don't move it around. Stop seining, you had long stretches of twine with corks on the top and leads on the bottom, and you had them in dories, and if the fish were in a cove that you needed to go to, you'd go shut that cove off. But you had to wait for the fish to come into land. Then, as technology outfished the fish, there was a thing called a purse seine. And so all the fish had to do would come up in the water. They might not be near land. And you would find these big schools of fish, and you'd run this net around them, and it had rings on the bottom with a rope going through it. So you'd pull that together like a purse, and you've got that whole bunch of fish. So there's literally no place they could hide. My father, who was on the fishing crew, on the seining crew that I was on when I was in high school, he was talking to me one night, as sometimes he did, and he said, "You know, Dennis, we have the capability," I don't think he used that word, of catching the last fish. What are you talking about? No, he said, we do. Where our technologies have evolved such that it's possible that we could catch the last fish. Well, I remembered that, and I still remember it because, in fact, we don't have a herring fishery like we had before now. I think there's a quota that they can catch some for bait, but only a limited amount. But we're not producing any food from them in this country. Anyway, I don't want to get too far afield. So this is the story of a fellow who had a weir down in his cove. And with this weir fishing, they would start to come into land, typically come inshore late April. and they would continue coming inshore on the various tides until late October, maybe 1st of November. And if you had a weir, and you had this tide, once the tide turned, in the older ones, you had to go out and close the weir gate, because if you left the fish to their own devices as they were swimming around in there, they might conceivably swim out, and you've lost them. So you would have to go and close the weir on the turn of the tide. That doesn't happen at the same time every night. And so you'd have to get up at various times each night, different times, about an hour later, get dressed and go down and close the weir, and then the next day you could take them out. Well, a fisherman always lives on anticipation. What can I catch? What's going to be the catch? And so that's probably what got the fisherman up each night to go out and close the weir. But at some point, the novelty of that wears thin. And so you might need a little dose of enthusiasm to get you out to the weir. And so this is what happened with Charlie in such a time. Charlie had a heron weir. It was down to Bailey's bite. He got up to tend it in the middle of the night. It was late October. Midnight, black as tar. Nothing out the window but a big cold star. House is like a cemetery. Kitchen fire was dead. I'm damn good mind, says Charlie, to go right back to bed. But a man who runs a heron weir, even on the side, is nothing but a slave to the goddamn tide. Well, a man feels meager and a man feels old in that pitch black midnight, lonesome and cold, with chills in his stomach like 40,000 mice, and the very buttons on his pants like little lumps of ice. Times he gets to feeling it's no damn use. So Charlie had a pitcherful in his orange juice. Well, then he felt better than he had before, so he had another pitcherful, just to last him to the shore. Well, down by the beach rocks, underneath a tree, Charlie saw something that he never thought he'd see. For sparkling in the lantern light as he went to pass was 3 big diamonds in the frosty grass. Diamonds, says Charlie. Where'd they come from? I think I'll pick them up later on. I always wanted some. Then he hauled in his dory, and she felt light as air. And in the dark midnight, Charlie rode off to tend the weir. Well, out by the weir gate, Charlie found an old sea serpent swimming round and round. Had a head like a washtub and whiskers like thatch, and breath like the flame on a Portland star match. Black in the lantern light, up he rose with a great big barnacle on the end of his nose, and he looked Charlie over, kind of surly and cross, and said, them fish you got shut up in there belongs to my boss. Huh, fish? Says Charlie, fish? In there? I ain't caught a fish since I built the damn weir. Well, says the sea serpent, nevertheless, there's 10,000 bushels at a rough guess. Charlie moved his lantern, gave his oars a pull, and he saw that the weir was brimming belly full. There was fish rising out of the water, 1 trillion at a time, and the side of each and every one was like a silver dime. Well, says the sea serpent, what you going to do? They're uncomfortable and they don't belong to you. So open this contraption up and let them go. Come on, shake the lead out. The boss says so. Oh, he does, says Charlie. Well, who the hell is he thinks he can set back and send word to me? Sea serpent twizzled, made a water spout, and he says, you keep on, brother, and you'll find out. Charlie says, you're nothing but a lice, so old Joe Hoary. So get your dirty whiskers off the gunnel of my dory. Sea serpent twizzled and he heaved underneath and he spun back a set of sharp yellow teeth and he came at Charlie with a gurgly roar and Charlie let him have it with a port side oar. Right on the noggin. Oh, 'twas a hell of a knock. And the old sea serpent, he sank like a rock. So go on back, yells Charlie, and tell that old jerk not to send a boy to do a man's work. Then over by the weir gate, kind of tinkly and clear, a pretty little voice says, "Yoo-hoo, Charlie dear." "Now what?" says Charlie. "This ain't funny." And the same sweet voice says, "Yoo-hoo, Charlie honey." And there on a seine pole, right in the weir, was a little green mermaid combing out her hair. "All right," says Charlie, "I see you and I know who you come from too." So he let fly his bailing scoop, and it landed with a clunk. And when the water'd settled, the mermaid, she'd sunk. But then the ocean moved behind him with a mighty heave and a hiss and a thundery, rumbly voice remarked, "I'm goddamn sick of this." And up come an old man, white from top to toe, whiter than the daisy fields, whiter than the snow, carrying a pitchfork with 3 tines on it, muttering in his whiskers and madder than a hornet. "My sea serpent's so lame that she can hardly stir, and my best mermaid, you've raised a lump on her, and you've been pretty sassy calling me a jerk. So now the old man has come to do the man's work." "Well," says Charlie, "why don't you leave me be? Because you may be the hoary old man of the sea, but I got to run a fish here shut up inside, and if you keep on frigging around, you're going to make me lose this tide." Next thing that Charlie knew, he was lying on the sand. The painter of his dory was right beside his hand. He could see out across the bay, and it was all calm and still and wide, and it was full daylight, and it was high tide. "Oh," he thought, "what am I about?" The oars weren't wet, so he hadn't been out. "Oh," he thought, "diamonds underneath a tree. Seems to me I found some. I guess I better go and see." But he couldn't find any. Not one gem. You see, there was only 3 little owl dungs with frost on them. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's very nice. And I know that part of that applause is for Ruth and not just me, because none of that's my words. So that's why we're here, to celebrate. Happy 123rd anniversary of her death. Of her birth. A remarkable lady. I'm so fortunate to have had an opportunity to be able to call her my friend and have her be able to say the same to me. So I'd like to share that with you. Bob, I guess it's back to you.
We have cake and refreshments out back. Kathy, our vice chair, made a cake like she does every year.
Out in the other room?
In the other room.
You don't have a pitcher full out there, do you?
I'll have you a picture for us.
Thank you all.